All right, so we're diving deep into Nicholas Sparks' territory today. I know a lot of you are super excited about his upcoming novel, Counting Miracles, and we're lucky enough to have some exclusive excerpts to dig into. It's almost like a behind-the-scenes look before the novel is even out.
You know, it's really interesting how these excerpts are set up. It's almost like snapshots from different points in the novel. We get these glimpses into the characters and the setting. I think it's a cool challenge to try and piece together the bigger picture from these little pieces. It really gives us a sense of how Sparks creates a story that pulls you in.
Totally. It's like having puzzle pieces scattered all over the place, and we're trying to put them together to see what the final picture looks like. Counting Miracles takes place in March 2023, and the story is split between Pensacola, Florida, and Asheboro, North Carolina.
Yeah, and I find the choice of settings interesting. I feel like Sparks often picks places that have this familiar but kind of isolated feel, right? It creates this intimacy where you can really focus on the characters and their relationships.
For sure. So let's talk about the characters we meet in these excerpts. First, we have Tanner Hughes. He's a former Army Delta and USAID worker who was in Asheboro searching for his biological father.
Right, and his whole journey to Asheboro starts with a deathbed revelation from his grandmother. She tells him about his father, Dave Johnson. It's a big change for Tanner, who's used to high-pressure situations from his work overseas with USAID in Cameroon and Côte d'Ivoire. Now, he's relying on an old phone book to find his way around this small town and figure out his family history.
And then, on top of that, his vintage Shelby gets wrecked in a parking lot. And guess who accidentally backed into it?
Oh yeah, that'll be Kaitlyn Cooper. She's a teenager trying to find her place in the world and dealing with all the ups and downs of growing up. She's Kaitlyn Cooper's daughter. Kaitlyn's a busy internist, a single mom with 2 kids, trying to balance her demanding career with raising her children.
It's that classic Nicholas Sparks kind of situation, when you say. 2 very different lives colliding because of a seemingly random encounter.
You got it. And remember, Kaitlyn's also got her own past, especially her divorce. So when this tattooed stranger shows up at her door with her daughter, she's not exactly thrilled. She's instantly on guard.
I can imagine. It's like all her internal alarms are going off.
Yeah.
But even with all that initial distrust, Sparks subtly hints at some attraction between Kaitlyn and Tanner.
Exactly. It's that slow burn that Sparks is so good at, that tension and anticipation that builds slowly. And what I find intriguing is that despite how different they seem on the surface, they actually have this common ground, their dedication to service.
Right. You have Tanner's work overseas and Kaitlyn balancing her medical practice with volunteering at Our Daily Bread, which is a local free meal service. It shows how much they both care about something bigger than themselves.
Their first date at the Cypress Swamp Zoo is a perfect example. We see Kaitlyn's warmth and care as a mom when she's interacting with Mitch, her 9-year-old son. Mitch is totally fascinated by the animals, especially the white deer, and we see that Tanner is genuinely interested in Kaitlyn, her life, what she's passionate about, and the challenges she faces.
And that white deer keeps popping up throughout these excerpts, almost like a symbol. There's something magical and mysterious about it, especially to Mitch. It makes you wonder if its appearance means something more.
Yeah, and speaking of symbolism and mystery, there's Jasper Johnson. He's an elderly man living this solitary life with his dog, Arlo. He spends his days carving these wooden figures. It seems like a simple hobby, but there's more to it.
But his peaceful existence gets disrupted when he runs into some teenagers in the Uwharrie National Forest. And, well, let's just say it doesn't go so well. It's a really unsettling encounter that reveals a darker side to this seemingly peaceful place.
It definitely raises the stakes and adds an element of danger. And then there's the discovery of a dead deer in the forest. This really disturbs Jasper, who's seen the white deer in the same woods.
You start to wonder, right, is there some poaching ring going on? How will this impact the characters, especially Jasper? This incident seems like a turning point.
For sure. And while all of this is happening, we also get glimpses of Jasper's past, particularly his memories of his late wife, Audrey, and this tragic house fire that changed his entire life.
This contrast between the past and the present is so striking. Kaitlyn and Tanner are cautiously exploring this possible romance, drawn to each other and their shared values. Meanwhile, Jasper is still wrestling with the loss of his family and all the unanswered questions about that fire.
It really emphasizes how the past can shape our present, influencing our choices, relationships, even who we are. And Sparks skillfully connects these seemingly separate threads, building tension and hinting at how their paths will intersect.
And that tension boils over in a confrontation between Jasper and those teenagers in the forest. It's a brutal scene, and Jasper's loyal dog, Arlo, gets hurt. It makes you question their motives. Are these kids just reckless, or is there something darker going on?
Right, and it really makes you think about how easily a peaceful situation can turn violent, how quickly things can spiral out of control. And at the same time, Kaitlyn and Tanner's relationship takes an unexpected turn after a passionate night together.
Caitlin learns about Tanner's financial independence. He could retire comfortably if he wanted to. And I think this triggers a wave of insecurity in her, maybe reminding her of past vulnerabilities and the power imbalances that can happen in relationships.
Yeah, and suddenly their different lifestyles and backgrounds feel much more significant. It leads to a big argument, and Caitlyn pushes Tanner away. Her decision to end things is really heartbreaking, especially seeing how vulnerable she is and how scared she is of getting hurt.
It's a very raw and emotional scene. It shows the complexity of relationships and how past hurts can resurface when you least expect it. But just when it feels like everything is falling apart, Arlo sets off a chain of events that could change everything.
Arlo, going all the way to Caitlyn's house to seek help for his injured owner, is both touching and significant. It shows his loyalty, and it acts as this catalyst that could bring all these characters back together.
Caitlin immediately worries about Jasper. Tanner, using a tracking app, follows Arlo's location and finds Jasper hurt and needing urgent medical attention. It's a very dramatic moment, and Tanner's quick thinking and first aid skills actually saved Jasper's life.
It really highlights how connected our lives can be and how random events can have unexpected consequences.
And at the hospital, we see this incredible convergence. Casey and Mitch are worried about Jasper, Caitlin is relieved he's alive, and Tanner is the unexpected hero who brought them all together.
It's this moment of connection and shared concern that rises above the earlier conflicts. It sets the stage for the truth about Tanner's parentage to come to light.
Driven by a hunch, Tanner goes to the sheriff and learns that Jasper's son, David, had a relationship with his mother, Monica Hughes. This confirms his suspicions and shows how lives can be intertwined across generations.
It's a crucial piece of the puzzle, adding another layer to their already complex lives.
Then, Caitlin visits Jasper in the hospital and learns about Tanner's possible connection to him. It's a really emotional revelation that forces her to confront her feelings for Tanner and rethink her assumptions about him.
It's a powerful moment where you realize how easily we can misjudge people based on superficial things or past experiences.
The final scene in these excerpts is incredibly moving. We see Tanner, Jasper, and Arlo visiting the family cemetery. It's a place of grief and memory, but also a place of connection and belonging.
It's symbolic, you know. It suggests closure for Jasper, new beginnings for Tanner, and the lasting power of family, both by blood and by choice. I don't know about you, but I'm completely hooked. What happens next? What's the story with the white deer? Will Caitlyn and Tanner find their way back to each other?
I'm dying to know. Sparks has set the stage for a story filled with emotion, suspense, and the possibility of redemption. It really feels like Sparks is giving us this peek into this big, intricate story, and we're left to wonder how all the pieces will fit together. But before we jump into all the predictions, let's take a closer look at some of the themes running through these excerpts.
Yeah, I'd say one of the most prominent themes is family, wouldn't you? We see all different kinds of family throughout these excerpts. Biological family, of course, but also those connections we make through choice. And even that bond between people and animals like Jasper and Arlo.
Exactly. It's like Sparks is saying, family isn't just about who you're related to by blood. It's about those bonds you build through love, shared experiences, and supporting each other. It's about finding people who really get you, who see you for who you are, even the messy parts.
That's so true. And speaking of messy parts, the theme of loss is definitely woven into the story, too. Jasper's tragic past, Tanner searching for his father, Caitlyn's divorce. They're all dealing with loss in different ways, figuring out how to grieve and heal.
It makes you think about how loss can really shape us, doesn't it? The choices we make, our relationships. It can make us put up walls, scared to let anyone in. But even with all that sadness, Sparks doesn't leave us feeling hopeless.
Right. There's this thread of hope throughout these excerpts, this belief in second chances and the power of love to change things. We see it in Tanner trying to find his family, in that initial connection between him and Caitlyn, and even in the way Jasper and Arlo care for each other.
And then there's this recurring image of the white deer. It shows up throughout the excerpts, almost like a silent witness to everything that's happening.
Yeah.
It represents something really special and rare.
I know, right? It's such a fascinating element. On one hand, it's this symbol of beauty and resilience, this ability to survive in tough situations. But on the other hand, it's a target for those who want to possess it, to control it.
It makes you think about our relationship with nature as humans, doesn't it? And
Well,
how easily beauty can be exploited or destroyed.
absolutely. And it kind of reflects that human desire for connection, too, for something that feels special and meaningful.
So these excerpts have given us a lot to chew on, but they've also left us with some burning questions. What happens next? What's going to happen to the white deer? Will it meet a tragic end? Or will it be a sign of hope in the midst of all this darkness? And what about Kaitlyn and Tanner? Is there any chance they'll find their way back to each other?
These are the kinds of questions that make you want to keep reading, right? To find out the answers for yourself.
Exactly. But before we go off speculating and making predictions, I'd love to hear your expert perspective on these excerpts. What are your key takeaways? What really stuck with you? You've really highlighted these interconnected stories and that emotional depth that we've come to expect from Nicholas Sparks. So what stood out to you the most as you were going through these excerpts?
Well, one thing that really grabbed me was how Sparks shows the complexity of human connection, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. We see Kaitlyn drawn to Tanner, but she's holding back. Her past experiences, especially her divorce, have left her guarded.
I think that's such a relatable struggle, isn't it? That push and pull between wanting to connect with someone and being afraid to be vulnerable, afraid of getting hurt again. It's something so many people go through.
Absolutely. And we're only getting Caitlyn's side of the story in these excerpts. We see her inner thoughts, her anxieties, and her insecurities. But I wonder, what about Tanner? How is he experiencing this whole thing, this new relationship, and then this sudden rejection?
That's a great point. It leaves us wondering about his motivations, what he wants for the future, and how does he deal with Kaitlyn pushing him away? Will he try to fight for their connection or just move on?
And then there's Jasper. We only get glimpses into his past. But it's obvious that the house fire that took his family away is a defining moment for him. It's a source of so much pain and maybe even some guilt that he hasn't dealt with.
Yeah, there's definitely something mysterious about that fire. Was it really just an accident? Or could there be something more to the story? And how will finding out that Tanner might be connected to him affect Jasper? He's been living this solitary life for so long.
It makes you think about whether these revelations could lead to healing and reconciliation, or if they might just reopen old wounds. And we can't forget about Casey and Mitch. They're not just side characters, they're essential to the story.
Right. They're the center of Caitlyn's world, and they've already connected with Tanner. Could they be the ones to bridge that gap between Kaitlyn and Tanner to help them overcome their differences and their fears?
It's definitely possible. Children often have this incredible ability to see through people's defenses and sense those real connections. And then there's this big question mark hanging over everything, the white deer. It's more than just a beautiful animal. It's a symbol that keeps appearing throughout the story.
It feels like it represents something pure and wild, a reminder of the beauty and strength of nature. But it's also a target. People are hunting it, seeing it as a prize to be owned and controlled. Will it survive? Will its fate be tied to what happens to the characters?
It's a question that stays with you long after you finish reading these excerpts. Will the white deer represent hope and new beginnings? Or will it be a victim of the darker side of humanity?
We've got all these intertwining stories, each with its own struggles, mysteries, and possibilities, but there's this sense of unity, too, a shared human experience that connects these characters despite their differences. What do you think Sparks is trying to tell us through this story?
I think he's exploring how complicated the human heart is, how our past shapes us, how we search for meaning and connection in a world that often feels pretty chaotic and uncertain. He's reminding us that even when things are tough, even when life throws you a curveball, there's always hope. Hope for second chances, hope for finding love and redemption in unexpected places.
Beautifully said. It sounds like Counting Miracles is going to be another one of those emotionally rich and thought-provoking books that we expect from Nicholas Sparks. A story that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
I completely agree. I don't know about you, but I can't wait for this novel to come out. I need to know how these stories play out, how these characters face their challenges, and what happens to the white deer.
Me too. I have a feeling we'll be doing another deep dive on Counting Miracles once it's released. But until then, for those of you listening, we highly recommend checking out this novel and experiencing the magic of Nicholas Sparks storytelling for yourselves.
And if these excerpts have gotten you curious, share your thoughts with us. What do you think will happen in Counting Miracles? What parts resonated with you? Join the conversation on our social media channels.
Until next time, happy reading.